So I would like to welcome Arnie Kander to the Quiet Time podcast and the Bennie Fowler YouTube channel. Arnie, how are you?
Benny, I'm doing well. I'm in the foothills of Boulder, Colorado, looking out at beautiful sun, mountains. Life is good.
Awesome. Arnie is a longtime friend, and he was the trainer for the Detroit Pistons. How long were you the trainer there for?
25 years.
25 years. 25 incredible years. How many championships? 3?
No, I was at the tail end of the bad boys. So I came in with Isaiah Thomas right at the end of theirs. So kind of on the sidelines of the last one with them. But then through the 1991, started in 90, but 91 all the way through 2014. And then I was with the Timberwolves for one more season. I retired, and Flip Saunders, I don't know if you remember Flip. Flip was a dear friend, God rest his soul. He actually passed away that season. And but I ended up joining the Timberwolves for 1 year.
This podcast is about success in leadership. You've seen success, and you have been successful in so many different ways. And, my book is Silver Spoon, the Imperfect Guide to Success, because there is no perfect way to get there. And you've been around a lot of successful people. What do you think the key traits are to being successful?
Well, first, a game plan. I don't think you can have success unless you first you have to do the homework. You have to figure out in life, what do you actually want to do? What's important to you? I mean, really listing. It's amazing how many people I've ever said, hey, have you ever written down what's important? List 5 things, and most say, oh, I know what's important. I'll say, well, tell me the 5. What are the 5 that you live your life by? They're lucky to get to 2. And usually then they're making it up. They've never really put the time in or thought about what's important in life. If you have a goal that you're trying to get to, whether you're an athlete, a business person, a musician, you have to have things that things in life that you work at. Some of those are the actual task of that. And some things have nothing to do with the task. But the greats, the Isaiah Thomases, the Ben Wallaces, the Bennie Fowlers, right? Mm-hmm. You only become really, really good at your task because of the commitment and all the groundwork, right? We build a house one brick at a time. We build a house with a basement first. We don't put the roof on. People always want the beautiful roof, the nice shingles and all of that. But the reality is, if you don't have a great foundation, nothing will ever survive.
That's awesome. That's an awesome way to put it. So how did you go about, getting to where you are, being a trainer for a professional sports team for 25 years? How did you lay out your game plan? And how did you, go about navigating your game plan?
Yes. So Benny, great question. So back then, there really were not physical therapists, biomechanists. They were not in professional sports. I think I was the second PT to enter the NBA. And so when we were talking about alignment and balance and visual, vestibular, all these different words, that was kind of voodoo, witchery, what's that about? What are you doing? And all of that. But the goal was to be able to fit in. If you just come in and say, well, these are my skills and this is how I'll do it in life, usually that doesn't work, right? It's like you hit your head against that wall 10 times and you realize, maybe I don't want to run through the wall. Maybe I want to get near the wall and sense what the wall is. So back in the day in pro sports, and it's interesting with The Last Dance, nobody had access. Nobody had view of what goes on in that world. No different when you join that world. I literally, in my first season there, I had to watch games from the stands. I was up 15 rows watching games, taking notes, analyzing movements, watching what happened, watching timeouts, watching all the various aspects of what occurred, and then trying to figure out, okay, what little piece can I add? So again, it's not always a straight and narrow route to our end goal. It's figuring out how can we get there and what do we have to do? What are all the little things that, I call it like a tool bag, right? Or a medical bag. Like, what do you put in that every single day to get better? Look at what you've done, right, over your career. I knew you when you were at Country Day, this young athletic kid coming in the gym, could jump out of the gym, and an amazing sprinter, and could play multiple sports, but I'm like, all right, Benny, what's going to make you great? And I remember the words you said back to me. You said, focus. I have to have focus. And I said, all right, for a 16-year-old to tell me you have to have focus, I was extremely impressed. And look where your career has taken you with that focus.
Yeah. And that's something I've always had to come back to is focus. Times where I've had, some down times in my career, always having to come back to focus and focus on the vision. Like, where do I really want to go? But who do I want to be? The purpose behind it. Because you don't want necessarily a means goal sometimes. Sometimes we chase means goals, money. But really, what is the end goal? And it's really the freedom and the choice of freedom that, people really want. And that's something that I'm continuing to learn and, do personal development every day. When you talked about The Last Dance, you got to see Mike. What was that like? What was that like from a standpoint of you being a part of the Detroit Pistons? What was it like to see him play and the way he approached the game?
Well, I mean, you're seeing glimpses of what he was. I mean, seeing it directly. He didn't know low gears. He only knew high gears. He was that Maserati, Porsche, Ferrari, always going hard. So in a lot of my data analysis, I was always measuring as many different things as I could. And one of them was this component of movement and balance, meaning when you move, are you constantly in balance? So what we would measure are degrees of deflection. So if you're running and you stop and you fall to the left a little bit, we would measure the deflection. And we came up with a ratio of how much is your body perfectly in line with movement and how much is it off balance. And most players in the NBA average about 85-15, maybe 90-10, the better ones. He was 98-2, meaning he was never off balance. All those stop, pull-up shots, and the things he said, he would let the defender, almost like a great martial artist, let their weakness, like he said with Byron Russell. He knew exactly Byron Russell would go for things. He would lean. Well, he took advantage of that. He did his homework. What we just said a few minutes ago, right? He knew every player inside and out. He knew their weaknesses. Grant Hill, right? I mean, one of my favorite people of all time, one of the greatest athletes, one of the greatest players to play the game. When Grant was young and we would go to play the Bulls, one of the routines we had was Grant would take 3 layups on the offensive side during the warm-up, and then 3 rebounds, and then he would lay in the middle of the court, and we would go through a few minutes just of some mindfulness, some light, easy movement stuff while he's laying on the floor. It gave him a chance to get out of the layup line, some centering work. So when we played the Bulls, Michael Jordan would see where Grant was, and he literally would run on the court. So they're getting ready to get into their layup line, and he would jump over Grant. And he did this 7 or 8 different times in different games. So we were playing the Bulls again, and I said, you know what? Let's just try something a little bit different. We moved, still center court, but we moved to the far end. So if he's going to run over him, it requires a complete run across the court, which nobody in the NBA probably would do except Michael. He comes out. I could see him looking, and he's like, where's Grant at? He sees he's on the far sideline. He runs all the way over. He doesn't jump over him, but he runs right next to him, and he just stares down at him. He knew all the psychological ploys that you'll see in the video. He pulls up. Usually it's in a red sports car. He was the only one allowed to park in the tunnel. Everyone else parked in that outside parking lot at the United Center. And he would pull out of his vehicle, Porsche, Ferrari, whatever he had, always red. And he was smoking a cigar. You'll see him constantly in these, but he was smoking a cigar pregame, and he would blow smoke at the visiting bus as he walked by. It's almost like he was armoring himself for the game, like everything for him. Not that I'd recommend smoking by any means, but it was the psychological ploys. Like if he would find weakness, he would find, anything that if anything were said, like we always knew if we were playing them, don't say anything. Don't put any words out. Anyone who asks a question to a player about the Bulls, just say nothing. Don't give him any ammo. And I remember one time We were playing and he sprained his ankle significantly, bad ankle sprain. He goes out, gets it retaped, comes back. I mean, I think we were down 8. We went up 8. He comes back after being taped. We end up losing by 16. This is in like 94, 95 or somewhere right before his, maybe 93. And so anyways, it's a day later, they're playing Vancouver. So you got that long flight all the way to Vancouver. This is a bad ankle sprain. And I'm like, he'll miss a game. This guy's going to miss a game. There's no load management with this guy. There's no sitting out. This guy, Michael was so competitive. For him not to play a game, it's so funny when you look, I don't want to compare it to the current athlete, but he played through everything, right? He was the warrior. He knew how to callous his body, how to toughen his body, he valued the game. He valued the work. He valued the commitment. He knew what it took to be great.
I think that's very important what you just said. He valued the work. I think sometimes we have to learn to do that or understand it, reframe it in a way. But him blowing smoke at the bus, like you said, he was armoring himself, getting himself ready to go. And I think that's incredible. That's an incredible story. I appreciate you sharing that. We also talk about leadership on this podcast. What do you think the key traits of a leader? And I tell people all the time that everybody's a leader. We will all have moments, where our leadership is defined and tested, but leadership is super important. And it's about connecting with other people and the connection of other people. That's why, you see the 04 Pistons, and I was very fortunate enough to be around that team as they went on to win that championship, but also throughout high school, these guys would come to our games and we'd be at the practice facility with you guys. Talk a little bit about the importance of leadership.
Sure. So leadership occurs all the time. I think most people look at it as once the game occurs, that's when you demonstrate leadership. But leadership are the things you display in a weight room, right? And people think, wow, what do you mean? It's like, well, no. Do you play in the weight room like it's game 7 of the finals? Meaning when you walk in that room, you have this incredible drive, this incredible focus. And if you watch Ben Wallace when he walks in a weight room, you would think like he's playing game 7 in the finals. We had guys that when they came to the Pistons, Rasheed Wallace was not a big weight room guy. He was a guy like, I don't need that. And he's one of the strongest athletic guys in the league. So we made the room competitive. We had various things, whether it's throwing balls against the wall, heavy balls. We had dot patterns they had to accomplish. They had balance drills they had to do. We literally tried to create competition and everything. And it's interesting in leadership, you never shy away from that. As a matter of fact, you lead it, you support it. So that occurs all the time. That occurs in the locker room. That occurs in the training room. It's amazing when you look for leadership. It's in every aspect of what we do, right? Our words, what we speak. Are you speaking truth? Are you speaking falsehood? Are you speaking things that have nothing to do with leadership? So a lot of times when a player, and I think being in a league for a long period of time, most of the time you're like, well, it's not really your role. I said, it's all our roles. If we're in leadership, that isn't just the best player on the team. That's the top player. That's the person who cleans the room. That's if we're together as a group. It's interesting, the words, and this is part of leadership, when they put their hands in the middle of the circle, right? That sacred circle that you put your hands in at the end of every practice. There's a word that a team chooses. And I always was really keyed into, is the word reflective of the team? So for example, a lot of teams will just say family. And then I'll ask players, I said, is this team a family? Are they truly a family? Meaning that's your brother right there. That's your sister right there. That's your mom. That's your dad. You respect them to that level. And they're like, oh, not even close. And I'm like, so how does it feel to put that word family that many days, that many times? Well, it feels unreal. I said, so you as a leader here, would you ever bring that to the group of like, hey guys, let's change that word so it's true. So I feel like I can actually put my hand in and be real. We do so many things in sports that are false, that are not real. They're not leadership. To gain that strength of voice, to gain that strength of saying, this is where I'm at. This is how I feel. And a lot of times young players are told they can't really say anything. And I'm like, no, there's a way it can be said. Maybe it's said just by how you handle yourself. Maybe it's said by other ways that aren't even words. Eventually, you'll earn that right in the league, basically, to bring those words. But that occurs by body language. That occurs by focus, by commitment, by dedication. There's so many ways of demonstrating leadership. And I think sometimes we think it's one way of doing it, by going out there and playing this way. And it's like, nah, people are missing the boat if that's what they think.
Love that. I never really thought about that when, sometimes on teams that I've been on, we say family, and it doesn't feel like that. It's a bunch of different, people going on their own individual path. And, I think that's super important. So what would be something that you would recommend to young leaders or people just in leadership positions right now, especially in a time like this? What would you recommend on how they change a characteristic or leadership or step into a leadership role to help them understand that?
Yeah, I think this is a great time to expand, that toolbox again. It's crazy. If you ask how many people have read a book or done anything during that, you've had so much time, all of us have, but how many people have done things that they normally have not done? For people to stay stuck in their routines during a time like this, when you've been given this, in a way, an extremely difficult time, but the gift is time. The gift is the ability to maybe a meditation practice, maybe a stretching practice, maybe, reaching out to people that you haven't reached out to, maybe dealing with conflict that you've avoided, maybe a family member that you've not had a real conversation with. So I think this opportunity allows, hopefully, all of us as a society to come back stronger, to come back better. It's interesting. Immune system is directly reflective to our emotional system. Those two go hand in hand. And usually when we don't take care of our emotional system, we don't take care of our immune system, and vice versa. So eating well during a time like this, exercising during a time like this, having some type of relaxation practice, whether it's breathing, yoga, whatever it may be, whatever, mindfulness. And people are, what is that? Well, we live in a world of technology. You can look up as many different ways. Maybe it's becoming, more connected to your religion, to your beliefs. I started doing stuff for the homeless here. So I'll, do various things like pick up food, deliver food, do treatments, things like that. So it's extending out, it's broadening. I think for everybody, don't be limited. What is our capacity? I think God's given us this incredible capacity to do so much more. And if we, through this pandemic, but that's not just this, that's in life. If you're able to do more in what you do, athletes have been given such an incredible gift because they have a platform, right? Look what you're doing. You have a platform. You get to share. You get to teach others. You get to learn from others and all of that. And I think that's what all of us need to do.
Yeah. Arnie, really appreciate you being on the Quiet Time podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and all of a little bit of your knowledge. I know you have so much more you could share, but I really appreciate you being on the Quiet Time podcast.
Appreciate it, Benny. Thank you. You take care. Look forward to seeing you next year on that football field.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, Arnie. Thank you so much.